You're listening to the Reality of It All podcast, candid conversations about today's hot topics. And now here's your host, Tracy Osborne. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about forecasting the culture of working in 2022. And, the last 2 years with the pandemic has really shifted the way we work, the way companies are working. I mean, we've had no choice. We've had to make this shift. So, what's going to happen going forward as, things kind of start to open back up again with the whole COVID and all of that. And joining me today is Natasha Bowman, and she is going to talk to us about, what's happening or what we can expect going forward. So, Natasha, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I am excited to have you. It's really interesting. I mean, for me personally, it's not something I have to worry about because I work from home and I work for myself. But, I've been watching and, for example, my fiance works for Home Depot and he's in the IT department. So, it used to be he had to go to an office every day while he's been working from home for the last 2 years with COVID. And Home Depot has decided to make that a permanent thing.
Okay.
And
Home Depot.
Yeah, and I can see a lot more companies doing that. It increases productivity. It cuts down on overhead. So what are we going to be seeing in the future?
Yeah, I think we're going to see more companies make the same decision that Home Depot made, and that is that remote work works. And it's for many reasons. While people went remote just kind of on a drop of a dime out of necessity due to COVID, what we realize is that we start to see a couple of things take shape. Number one, people had the opportunity to really engage in passions that they typically had not engaged in before, because they were spending so much time community work, and doing all these things, going back and forth to work, spending all this time going back and forth to work. Now you have this extra time to spend with your family, do things in terms of self-care, and employees have really enjoyed that. On the other end, employers have actually enjoyed more productive employees with that time that they've gotten back. In fact, I've heard from many employees, hey, I probably work more hours at home than I did when I was in the office, because my, laptop is always set up. I may stop by and at my comfort, I just kind of work throughout the day. And that's really what that workplace flexibility definition is that we've always kind of tried to achieve. People have realized that. So employers have also saved money, not having this brick and mortar, not paying for utility costs. And some organizations I've seen have actually passed that cost savings on to their employees so they could set up their home offices permanently. So what I've, noticed is that, for those positions that can work remotely, many organizations are allowing that to be permanent. And I haven't seen too much pushback about that in terms of employees. They like it. It's bringing them a lot of physical and mental health and wellness. It's cost savings for both the employer and the employee. And you get more productivity.
Absolutely. I mean, you're looking at less sick days, especially for those of us who are working moms. We don't have to call out necessarily now. If the kids are homesick, we're here, we can still work, we can still do our job and take care of the kids. So
or
I'm
even
sure
else, even when we're under the weather, a lot of times it takes so much energy to get up, get dressed, get in your car, et cetera, but you don't necessarily kind of mind just getting up and getting on your computer while you sit in bed, while you're a little under the weather, So again,
Right.
Absenteeism, based upon what you just stated, either for a family member or yourself, there's a better chance that I still may be able to work, right? So again, that goes back into that, just being able to be more productive.
Exactly. I mean, I know that they were trying telecommuting, over the past probably decade. And a lot of employers were really resistant to it because they felt that if the employee wasn't in the office, they couldn't control what they were doing. How do they know that they're actually doing their job?
It was all about trust. It was all about trust.
What's that?
It was all about trust. It came
exactly. Exactly. And, and I still saw some of that. I've heard of, some employers who put like tracking software on their computers or, the employees had to have their camera on the whole time or, stuff like that. But I think, after 2 years, I think that's kind of settling down and people are starting to really just trust their staff.
Yeah, I think so. I think before it was all about trust. What does this look like you working at home? You're going to be just messing around watching Netflix, not really working, and, when it became, this is not a choice, right? They had to do it. They saw just the opposite. People were, and I have a neighbor who, if his mouth doesn't move, for a certain amount of time, he gets in trouble. So we still have some trust issues there. But all in all, I think that, what we just spoke about before, they're starting to see there's many advantages to this. And, if you are calling people back in and they're able to work remote, it still just comes down to a matter of trust, and I'm not sure why, that it is just unwarranted. And that is what's taken us into what you have probably heard about, the Great Recession. Not Great Recession, sorry, Great
Resignation. Yeah, I was just going to ask you about the Great Resignation. I mean, we saw people leaving the workforce in droves.
Yes, absolutely. And it was, really at the beginning of the pandemic, people left the workforce because number one, it was, hey, I can go work anywhere now. Many people left, to go to cheaper cities. Some people even left the country. There were like work visas. Hey, you could, like Mexico had, hey, you could come work here for like 6 months on a work visa. So people got to see other parts of the world, live cheaper. And then it was like, well, maybe I don't want to work at all. Maybe I want to pursue some other passion I've always wanted to pursue full time. I'm not living in expensive New York anymore, or I can sell my expensive New York apartment, use this money, go to a cheaper place and pursue my real passion. And that was one reason. Another reason was that people really didn't realize how toxic their work environments were until they left their work environments. And they had the opportunity to be at home and feel psychologically safe. And so when that happened, it was like, wait a minute, I didn't realize how toxic it was. I didn't realize how much my work environment was impacting my physical and mental health until I had the opportunity to step away from it. And so that caused a lot of resentment towards their employers. And they're like, I'm not going back to that environment, and I'm not continuing to contribute my value to that environment. So, that's really what we saw as part of the Great Resignation.
Absolutely. Do you think that the whole unemployment thing, being able to get all this extra money through unemployment because of COVID, was that a factor as well?
It started out that way, but that only lasted for so long, right?
Yeah.
And it's out now, and we still are seeing people not return to the workplace. Right. So I think that was initially what we saw. And initially, the unemployment wasn't really due to the Great Resignation. Those were just two people that were laid off or furloughed. My restaurant has now closed. It really had nothing to do with that. And then, then as things began to open, you saw a few people start to say, well, I'm not going back because now I have these extra funds. But those extra funds ran out quite some time ago. And we still are not seeing people return back to work. And I think it's way less because of the unemployment supplements, and more so to some of those cultural things that I talked about, as well as that ability to pursue passion. Another thing, if you don't mind, I want to talk about the Great Resignation that recently became available, some data, was that the Great Resignation also did not impact all demographics. There were a lot of marginalized people that were not able to be a part of the Great Resignation.
Sure.
They didn't have the resources to just walk away from their jobs and go camping or, move to Mexico or things like that. So, I think what we will continue to see as an output of that is continued inequity in the workplace. So I'm really keeping my eye on this. Because the labor because there is such a labor shortage, and now it's on the backs of marginalized people, right? You see these restaurants that are just overcrowded. You see, everywhere, call centers, there's wait times out the wazookie. I called like that airline the other day, and it was like a 3-hour wait,
Oh my gosh.
So, and we're seeing that mostly it was marginalized people who are now left behind, and now they're just being, worked like a dog, and so I'm keeping my eye on that because I think that's going to tell us another story about a year from now of how marginalized people were left behind to kind of keep the economy going, but they're not really being rewarded for those efforts, right, of keeping that economy going.
No, they're being abused. They have to take the brunt of, the customer service of, all those jerks and stuff out there who are impatient.
Yeah, and they are jerks. There's no patience.
They are. It's like I've heard stories of, like, I'm in a Facebook group for my local county. And they post in there, what restaurants are closed today, who's short staffed, so that we, everybody kind of knows what's going on. And there was one, I can't remember which restaurant it was. It was one guy running the entire thing by himself.
Wow.
He was doing all the cooking and the orders, everything. And, it's just, it's crazy.
Yeah, I've seen it for myself.
I think that has happened with the restaurants and stuff.
I'm in New York City, and there's places I'll go for lunch, and it's just like, we're not open today.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're not open. It's like, Chipotle. I'm like, what do you mean you're not open?
Yeah, because they don't have enough staff to open.
Yeah, so the next day I'm like, what happened? We didn't have enough staff, so but what we're seeing is, and what I think where the inequity comes in is that they're offering, all of these like sign-on bonuses and incentives to recruit new employees, right? But they're not offering those types of incentives and bonuses for those that are stayed behind.
Exactly.
Right. So that's where that inequity comes. And then, as we've seen historically, when people do decide, oh, I think I'm done having fun now, or I've run out of money or whatever, I'm going back to the workforce, they're going to go back into their management positions. You think about World War II, right? And the women were left behind to work in the factories and to do all of these jobs. And then as soon as the men return back from World War II, it's like, okay, you go back to where you belong in the house, and we'll take over from here. So, I'm kind of anticipating and really looking, because history repeats itself, right?
Sure.
I'm looking to see how that's all going to play out, because this won't last for long. People will return to the workforce. I don't know when that will happen. We're, continuing to see a resurgence of COVID. I don't want to say on the brink of a shutdown. They're saying, no, it's not going to happen. This is not March 2020, but it kind of feels that way. I mean, in New York City, I'm slowly seeing things close down, Broadway shows, this, that. So it feels kind of the same. But people will return. People will return to the workforce. And we'll see what that looks like, right? And will we do the right thing as organizations and reward those that stayed behind and kept our economy going? Or will we do what we've done historically and let the marginalized demographics, keep this economy going and continue to build America on their backs, but not reap the benefits of it?
Yeah, I hope not. I think these people who are busting their humps, taking the abuse of the public, working in crazy hours to cover everything, they're the heroes. They're our nation's heroes right now, and they need to be rewarded. Not the sign-on bonus, not the please come work for me and I'll pay you all this money. It's the people who stayed. They need the bonuses. They need the rewards, and they need the recognition. And employers need to realize that, or else, it's just a big slap in the face.
Exactly. It really is. But unfortunately, we have seen it before. So hopefully history doesn't repeat itself. Hopefully we've learned from our past, and hopefully we'll do the right thing, right? And we'll have to watch it. We'll have to hold organizations accountable for their behavior as we watch this. And more importantly, like you just said, as we, especially, we're talking right now during the holiday season, and this will be, the public won't hear to after.
Right.
But even post-holiday, just be kind, just realize and appreciate the people who are showing up. Be kind, be patient. And that goes a long way,
It really does.
Let's do our part. We can't control what organizations do, but we can control our behavior and our actions. And start with being patient, start with being kind.
Yep, absolutely. You mentioned a while back about the toxicity of the workplace. And I want to ask you, where do you see workplace culture going in 2022 and beyond, around the toxicity and around the importance of mental health, now that that's kind of becoming a little bit more mainstream to talk about?
Yeah, exactly, which is a great thing. And I think we're going to see so much more conversation, action, and resources around mental health, especially in 2022. For those that have stayed behind for the reasons that we just stated. And, people, I don't know anyone that hasn't lost someone to COVID. This whole pandemic has really been, a mental strain, along with some of the historical issues of the workplace. And so employers are now taking note of that. And that's one of the reasons as well people left, right? So a lot of times it takes these dramatic events for employers to kind of sit up and take note about things, right? So employees are leaving. Why are they leaving? Because of these toxic work environments, and and that impacted my mental health, and I'm choosing my mental health over my job. So what do I have to do now? Oh, let's address mental health, right? We see this happen over and over again. Like, oh, I didn't know sexual harassment was happening until it made it to the news. We kind of close our eyes to these things until these dramatic events. So essentially, that's what the focus will be. I have shared a personal story on my social media that I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder during COVID. And so therefore, I have kind of made it my own focus as a workplace advisor to organizations about the strain of my work, even as a just like you, a CEO of my company, just the stress and burden of being an African-American woman who has spent many years fighting my way up the corporate ladder, despite being an African-American woman, then running my own business, that took a lot of, mental stress, right? So while my bipolar disorder wasn't directly related to a toxic work environment, if I look back over the years, right, and those things that have contributed to essentially what some would call that mental breakdown, had a lot to do with just, being in these professional environments. So what I've been helping organizations to do is think about, what does workplace wellness look like? Traditionally, when organizations think about workplace wellness or talk about it, they'll give you, oh, hey, here's a gym membership discount. Oh, hey, here's a steps challenge. Here's a weight loss plan, right?
Right.
They only address the physical aspects and only give you very little resources, if any at all, to address your mental health. So it doesn't matter if I walk 5 miles a day. If I walk into a toxic work environment on a day-to-day basis, eventually that's going to affect my physical health as well. So I've been helping to redefine what does wellness look like in the workplace, besides some of those things that they had been traditionally, given, Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I several years ago, I had a client who was incredibly toxic and very emotionally abusive, really. And because of my past, it really triggered me. And it was to the point where she had me questioning my abilities. She had me questioning my intelligence. I would literally feel nauseated just going into my inbox to see, what is she going to say today, and I finally let her go. I kept her on because she paid well, and she had to pay well because she treated people like crap, and I finally let her go. And the second I hit send on my termination email, that entire weight was gone.
Oh, felt
because
so good.
I no longer cared. I gave her like a 30-day notice. I no longer cared what she had to say. And it still took me a few months to get over it and to, really realize it was her, not me, that I do know what I'm doing and what I'm talking about. But so that workplace toxicity, and this was all virtual. I can't even imagine what it would be like if I had to actually go into an office and see her on a daily basis. It totally affects you physically.
Yep, it does. It does.
I mean,
and that like you said, walk away, and I've been there as well. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, that's just the best thing that could have happened to me, and you don't realize it till you walk away. And that's what people saw when they went remote. They felt that weight of, going to the office, and think about all the stuff that happens in between work, right? A lot of times that too is what leads to the toxicity is, I'm working, then I'm, hearing microaggressions. Someone is making fun of my accent. Someone doesn't know how to pronounce my name or calls me the wrong name, or you're dealing with all that extra stuff. When you're on these Zooms, a lot of that extra stuff, that water cooler talk, break room crap that you have to deal with, the after work events, all those things are eliminated. And that gave people just that sense of relief, and like, I'm not going back to that. Forget it.
Yeah, absolutely. Natasha, I know that our time is running out. And before we wrap up, I definitely want to talk about your new book. So tell us about your new book.
Yes, I'm so excited about it. It really deals a lot with what we're talking about. And I actually started writing it way before COVID, about a year before COVID. It's called The Power of One: Leading with Civility, Candor, and Courage. And it's really about workplace cultures, and, I'm a labor and employment law attorney by trade. And what I realized over the years, I left the legal part very early in my career and went over to the HR side because I was tired of being on the dark side of misconduct in the workplace. So I'm like, what can we do to be more proactive and intentional and, mitigating this legal crap, And what I realize is that, by the time something makes it to illegal behavior, I mean, it's usually not overt stuff, right? People usually don't say and do things overtly that are illegal, right? It's usually, like I said, those microaggressions, those decisions based on bias. I like to call them culture vultures. But over time, if that behavior is directed towards me and I experience it on a day-to-day basis, then eventually it crescendos to the unlawful behavior, right?
Yeah.
So the point of this book the theme is around addressing those micro inequities and addressing those subtle insults and bringing civility, candor, and courage back into the workplace. And not just on the point of people that have positional leadership, that have, your titles, but everyone has the ability to become a leader, right? And lead with civility, candor, and courage. It's really giving power to the powerless, right?
Right.
And this concept came from a story, if you don't mind me sharing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Early in my life, I was born with congenital heart disease. And at 11 years old, I continued to get sick and sick and sick over my childhood. By the time I turned 11, I got really, really sick, and spent more time in the hospital than out. But I had pneumonia. It wasn't, my heart. It was all these cases of pneumonia. And my mother thought that there was a correlation between my pneumonia and the heart disease, but my pediatric cardiologist didn't think it was. So she kept calling, like, just see her, just see her. They refused to see me. I'm getting sicker and sicker. One day she calls, though, and a nurse, who had empathy and was like, I really don't think this is related to her heart, but I can hear the desperation in your voice. So I'm going to give her this appointment. So she gives me the appointment. I get there, get checked out, and the doctor goes, "Oh my goodness, you have 6 months to live." So at 11 years old, I had open heart surgery. And guess what? I never had pneumonia again. And I never got sick again. And so when I think about that nurse's actions, right? She used what I like to call her power of one. And she used an ordinary action that influenced extraordinary change for me. And her ordinary action was just simply empathy. She went against everything she knew medically, everything she had been taught. Everybody else was like, nope, we know for a fact that, pneumonia, heart disease, not related. But she challenged her perception. She challenged everything she thought she knew, and she had empathy, gave me the appointment, saved my life. So imagine if all of us, right, whether we're in the workplace, whether we're in a community, if we used our power of one, right? If we started to challenge our perceptions, challenge the status quo, lead with empathy, right? In our day-to-day, just do these ordinary actions, how much extraordinary change we can influence in our workplaces, in our community. That's what my new book is about.
Oh, that's incredible. Absolutely incredible. It's amazing how not only, mama's intuition, I'm telling you, mama's intuition is almost always right.
Almost always right.
But yeah, like you said, the actions of one person, kind of going against the norm, going against the standards, and saying, all right, we're going to listen to you, and, we'll bring you in, and we'll just, we'll take a look.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that one action has not only did she save your life, but because of that, look at what you've gone on to do and become. It's that ripple effect.
Yeah, that early life lesson, really taught me a lot in life, and facing death at 11 gave me resilience. I feel like there's nothing I can't face now and overcome.
Right.
But and then it really helped me to just, understand just that power, just thinking back over that story as I got older. I even think about, and I talk about this a lot, the people while I was in the hospital, the people that came to clean my room, so that it would be sterile, so I wouldn't get sick, but that, stayed behind and talked to my mom, who was lonely sitting at my bedside, the guy that wheeled me out the day that I was discharged, and how excited he was that I was finally going home. It was those ordinary people, right, that weren't high on the totem pole that really made an impact on me. I don't even remember my surgeon's name. I didn't even see him, I don't think. I think I was probably like already knocked out on anesthesia. But it was those just ordinary workers walking around that hospital, that made that experience the best it could be in that situation. And I want to make sure that workers across America understand that their roles are important. They have the ability to change someone's life, no matter what that role is, and that they are important. And I want to make sure that organizational leaders understand that everyone has the right to be seen, to be heard, to be valued, and to be respected, no matter their title, no matter their paycheck, everyone in the workplace, because they're doing something important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. From, the CEO down to the janitor. They're all part of the same company, part of the same culture, and part of the same mission and vision. So absolutely.
Yep.
Well, Natasha, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me today. This has been really fascinating. I talk about trauma so much that it's nice to talk about something else.
Yes, we're talking during the holiday season, so let's be positive,
Absolutely.
and let's, of course, we've all experienced, trauma, and I definitely have had my fair share of trauma this year, as I told you about my mental health diagnosis, but I'm walking into this new year with gratitude, and I encourage everybody else to do the same.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you again. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. I will have all of Natasha's contact information, the link to her book, everything in the show notes. So just take a peek down there, and all of that will be there for you. And thanks for listening, as always. And we'll talk to you in the next show. That's it for today's show. Thanks for listening. Be sure you subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, and TikTok.